Can we just stop? Oof. I am contradicting Dan McClellan's video. He says I was wrong, and I was right, but I'm gonna stitch my own video and we can learn together. With the Resurrection Sunday rebranding for Easter, yes, the word Easter has pagan roots, but good news, Dan does say that the word Easter does have these like pagan roots. We'll get into that in just a second. It's actually a way better term. Hi, I'm Jeremy. I'm a deep skeptic, also a pastor. Celebrating death and resurrection in the springtime is in no way unique or an innovation with Easter. We'll get there, but first let's talk about the word. So according to the Oxford English Dictionary, the word Easter has its origins in an 8th century monk called the Venerable Bede, and he says Easter month, or I can't exactly say it, I'm not a scholar, but Easter month actually had its origins in Astra, which is a pagan goddess of springtime. Okay, so the OED reference, you can see it right here. And this is actually what Dan says, is that there is this linguistic connection to this word. And so it sort of evolved from that. And there was a religious festival in her name in the springtime, according to St. Bede, that is debated. Like, there's not a lot of evidence, which means if it happened, it was likely very localized. But, you know, those springtime festivals just celebrate what is actually happening in spring. What's happening in spring is the death of the winter is breaking forth into new life, you know, new buds on the trees. And from after everybody was locked in for those months, the women who got pregnant during those months of snuggling are starting to show. And so there's also generally a celebration of fertility. And it's like a festival of hope that, okay, this is gonna be a good year. We're gonna have a good harvest, all of that kind of stuff. And so they would use common symbols. I mean, like, common symbols, not just in that area, but all over. Like, okay, so here's where I'm like 90% wrong. All of the Christian stuff that I am saying there is wrong, because where the Easter bunny and the eggs come from is quite different. The use of those symbols began in the Germanic region. That you can look at Dan McClellan's video for all of the really incredible scholarly detail, but the eggs were the way that they broke the Lenten fast, and actually would paint the eggs different colors, like red for the blood of Jesus, yellow for hope, and they would exchange those, which I think is pretty cool. And then the bunny, there was a bunny in that part of the world that could have a litter of bunnies, and then way too fast could have another litter, like way sooner than they should have. And so the bunny was a symbol of the virgin birth. And so all of that is where those traditions come from in Christianity and the celebration of Easter. However, the egg is actually a symbol in a lot of different religions and a lot of different religious festivals, because it actually does symbolize hope. It does symbolize the things that I was talking about in this video, but its connection to Christianity is not based on the pagan deity that I referenced earlier, that Dan references in his video as a source for the word Easter. And in fact, in a lot of the world, they don't refer to Easter as Easter. They actually refer to it as some version of Passover. Eggs, right? Eggs are the symbol of hope, of like, oh wow, this is in this beginning form, like springtime, and it's going to produce a wonderful chicken. Bunnies, also a very common thing to be celebrated in these springtime festivals, because, you know, bunnies mate like bunnies, and there's fertility involved in all of this. And the common pathway for this sort of evolution of a term and of festivals, and of like festivals of a new religion taking on symbols of an old religious festival that was in that place at the time, is that there are common things to humanity, our experience of springtime, and our idea that the divine is somehow involved in this cycle of death and rebirth. And so when a new religion comes into favor, they will often take on words and symbols and practices of the other religions in that place, because they don't come into existence and into favor out of nowhere. They come into existence among the people who were already celebrating these other things. And This idea, though, of language changing its meaning over time is actually, Dan's actually made a bunch of videos about that, and that is really helpful and true, and is also really what is being talked about when we talk about the word Easter, and it sort of making this transition from beginning with this deity's name and eventually in a new form referring to this Christian festival. And they say, oh, well, you know what? This is kind of a similar celebration. We can use these same symbols. That's how you get the Christmas tree, right? And Christmas wreaths. And it doesn't mean that you can't have a Christmas tree because somehow that is worshiping another god. That's ridiculous. And so the term Easter has all this beautiful layered history. It connects Christianity and the celebration beyond Christianity. It connects it way back, and it connects it to this sort of human experience of the springtime and of death and rebirth, and sort of catches us up into something even bigger. Easter's pretty good. Now, Resurrection Sunday, it's a new thing. It's kind of on the nose, and you lose a lot. You lose the whole history. You lose the whole bigger human connection. It's really a bad term, and it's also just not great marketing either. So I was wrong about a good bit of what I said there, and that's part of what it means to be a deep skeptic, also a pastor, is that you believe that you're wrong about all kinds of stuff, and when you find it out, you make sure that it's reliable, and then you change what you believe based on the new data. However, what I want to say is the bigger point of this video was about hope, and about how death and resurrection and springtime is actually something that should help us find hope in a time that is very difficult and very hopeless for a lot of people, that this is not the end, that just like there is death, there's also resurrection. Just like there is winter, there's also springtime, and I hope that this season can do that for you.